So I've just had a wonderful cup of tea in the little tea room, the cat's pajamas tea room, and I was sitting at a table. Most of the tables have got 4 chairs, and I was just sitting at a table on my own having a cup of tea, and it was pretty full, and I could see there was a young family walking around with 2 daughters looking for somewhere to sit, and it was raining outside. So I showed them that I had place at my table, and they came over and we started chatting. And lovely Sri Lankan family who are in Australia on holiday for 3 weeks from Florida. So we started chatting and just talking to their 2 young daughters, and of course I had to ask them whether they've seen alligators, and they said yes. You never walk close to a sort of water's edge because you never know what's lurking. And anyway, we were talking about alligators and all things Florida. And then after a little while, her husband stretched over and said to me, "I believe you're from South Africa." So I said yes. Turns out he's the biggest Springbok rugby fan in Australia. Well, not in Australia, in Florida. He was so excited to hear I was from South Africa. He said he's had a shirt printed with the number 9 on it. He's a big Steph du Toit and Siya Kolisi fan. So the next thing we were talking rugby, and of course I don't know much about rugby, but he was talking to me about the game and the World Cups, and he was so excited. He said wherever they go, his wife is a All Black supporter and all his friends are All Black supporters, but he said he's a die-hard Springbok supporter. And I asked him if he'd seen Chasing the Sun, so he said he'd heard of it and was doing everything in his power to get hold of it. And we were talking about Rassie and just the way the team plays, and oh my goodness, for someone who doesn't know much about rugby, I was really trying my best. But anyway, it was lovely just chatting to someone about South Africa and rugby, and he was just saying what a beautiful country it is and that they would love to go there. It's amazing when you are so far from home. And his wife asked me, and she said, is Australia very similar to South Africa? And I said yes, in so many ways. The people, the food, the climate. I said we just don't have the same animals, but other than that, very similar. But I said to her, you will always miss home, you will always miss South Africa, but we're very happy in Australia, and we just love the people, the food, the culture, the history. Here's a little noisy miner. Let's see if we can zoom in on him. I'm not sure if they're related to our Indian miners in South Africa. I don't think so. They spelled M-Y-N-A-H, whereas these are spelled M-I-N-O-R. But they're just as aggressive and just as clever and very territorial. Where is he? He's here somewhere. Let's just see if we can pan out and find him. There we go. These are the little birds that we have quite a lot of in our garden. Anyway, so it was just a lovely 30 minutes just speaking to someone who was just so enthusiastic about South Africa and our rugby and our team. And yeah, one sees once again just the power of sport, what sport can do, how it brings people together. Little pavilion. So this is a sundial. Hard to tell the time with the sundial. Okay, well we won't be able to read. We won't be able to tell the time today because there's no sun. But we're lucky because there's been very little rain. So it's actually a beautiful day. Apart from the lack of sun, it's really a beautiful, beautiful day. And it's always so special when you meet lovely people. And that's what my mum always said. She always says there's more things that we have in common than we don't. There's always some connection with people. If one just gets talking, you'll always find something in common. These botanical gardens are really beautiful. It's a little amphitheater here. Probably have musicians there or something happening. I can hear someone singing. This must be a conservatory of music. It's an opera singer. Not sure if you can hear that. I love autumn. Look at all the leaves. Most perfect spot to sit. There's obviously something happening down there in that pavilion. Probably for the light show getting set up. And I was telling this chap, I said to him, every time we used to watch rugby, we had 2 Labradors, George and Jenny, and back in South Africa when we used to watch the rugby, George just knew when the national anthem started playing on the TV, George knew there was trouble coming, and he used to dash upstairs and go and lie in one of the bedrooms upstairs, because he just knew that when the rugby started there was going to be a lot of shouting and cursing the ref and a lot of excitement, which George was not too keen on, so he used to disappear. And we always laughed because national anthem meant take cover for George. So this is the little herb garden. That was where the sundial was. So I'm walking out back towards the top entrance because I want to head off into Hyde Park. It's just one of their security trucks. Everybody's so polite. And so these must be little flowers that light up at night that they've installed in this tree. Will be very pretty. Let's see if we can zoom in. So those little flowers will all light up at night, which will be quite spectacular. So we'll definitely have to come back tonight. There's a lovely, not sure what you would call it, it's a kind of sculpture come plant installation. So it's a whale. I'll have to show you from the bottom because you can't really see it from the top. But there you can see its tail. If I swing round and then I'll zoom in. If we zoom in, I don't want to zoom in too much. And then behind it is another tea room. So this will all be lit up at night, all these light bulbs. So pretty. Look at the roots of this tree. Oh, that's a currawong that you can hear. Oh, oh, oh. It's also an iconic Australian bird, currawong. places to sit, just quietly think. I think the botanical gardens are so good for one's soul. You come and sit here, it doesn't cost anything to come in, and you can just sit and think and soak up all this green energy that's so good for our souls. It's a good way of grounding, getting rid of all this negativity and energy we pick up from our electronic devices. The last time we sat here, it's also a tea room, the center piece where the lawn is was actually a pond, and they've obviously filled this pond in, but the sacred ibis were all walking around the pond, and then they would come and get food from people, pieces of bread and toast, and then they would take it back into the pond and dunk it like we would dunk a biscuit or a rusk, and get it nice and soft, and then munch away happily on it. Makes me think of a little nursery rhyme I learned way back at nursery school. I went to a little Jewish nursery school. I think my mum was desperate to get me out of her hair. I'm sure I was hyperactive. And there was a nursery rhyme I used to come back and tell every day about a whale. If you ever see a whale, you must never stand on its tail, because you'll never see that whale again. Well, this whale we've seen a few times, and it's just as beautiful. Of the Botanical Gardens, and I've been so lucky because the rain is holding off, which is quite something. Another wild fig. So big. Another lovely pavilion to sit in if it rains. Last time we were here there were a lot of people that obviously came down from the offices around the park, and they bring their lunch with them and come and sit and share lunch in the pavilion. Mr. Binbird, Mr. Sacred Ibis. Love this bronze. Huntsman and his dogs. It's beautiful. And there behind us, or in front of us, is the Sydney Harbour Bridge. How does it get any better than this? And there you can just see the top of the Sydney Opera House. This is the conservatorium. Beautiful old buildings. It was built in 1915. This tree reminds me of the tree in Avatar. Isn't that beautiful? Canners. So this is an exit, but I think I'm going to walk around to the main exit. Lovely rose garden, although the roses are probably not at their best right now. I just keep thinking about this lovely family I met in the little restaurant and how excited they were to speak to someone from South Africa. people recognize our accent straight away. When we checked in yesterday, the young girl behind the reception desk asked if we were South African because her father had come out from Zimbabwe 21 years ago. So it seems like the accent is quite distinctive. Look at this tree. Wow. That's a granddaddy of a tree. Oh goodness, it's beautiful. You just can't imagine how big it is. It's like a whole world on its own. All the little critters that live up in its branches must be possums. These are the main gates, which are really lovely. But I'm just going to quickly head towards this beautiful fountain. The first European settlers arrived under Captain Arthur Phillip. He's standing at the top of the memorial. And they'd left England in May of 1787 and arrived in Australia in January of 1788. And it was a fleet of about 11 ships. They were the first European settlers to arrive in Australia. And the area where our hotel is, which is called On the Rocks, was that was the original site of the first arrivals at the Sydney Cove. And it was called On the Rocks because of the sandstone rock formations around the area of the Sydney Cove. And of course the sandstone rock was then used to build the buildings and so on. We've just got a bin bird arriving, a sacred ibis for some water. And so that's why that area was called On the Rocks. And apparently the oldest street in Sydney is in that area called George Street. That was the first road that was built by the European settlers, and it was demarcated by the line of tents that were obviously erected once the settlers had arrived. So that line of tents became the first, the demarcation of the first road built by the European settlers. So that's called George Street. And the little alleyway that I walked down from our hotel to get to Circular Quays, the one is called Nurses Walk, and that was named after the nurses, many of whom who'd come from the original convicts that had been transported. And that was the route that they would take from obviously their tents to the site of the first hospital, and they would go and work there. And then the other little alley I walked down to get to Circular Quays is called the Suez Canal, and that was named so because of the deluge of water that would flow down this narrow, it's literally one person wide, and obviously if it rained a lot the water would pour down this very steep alleyway. It was also the site of a lot of criminals. The area was apparently quite a bad area initially. It was the site of slums and robbers, sailors coming off the ships, walking up these narrow alleys would often be set upon and robbed. There were a lot of prostitutes, and there were gangs operating in these alleys. So it was a very dangerous area. And it was only, I think, in 1901, when the bubonic plague hit Sydney, that the slums were cleaned up and obviously demolished, and this beautiful sort of cosmopolitan little area called On the Rocks has been developed, and is quite a sought after site with lots of little restaurants and coffee shops and boutiques. Very cosmopolitan, very beautiful, with a lot of hotels. And of course it's just above, well, it's in the area of George Street, which was the first road built by the Europeans that had been demarcated by the tents that had been set up. So it's a very, very historical part of Sydney. It's really the birthplace of Sydney, is the Rocks. Anyway, this is just a beautiful monument, a testament to all of those people who arrived in Australia in 1788.